and welcome to our 6 to 8 channel. This is a chapter for my grade 6 students out there. Very interesting chapter, very new chapter, as in we've not done it before, but it is a part of your syllabus. We are going to be discussing lesson 1 or part 1 of air around us. Right now, this is a really cool chapter because it deals with something that is literally all around us, that is so important for us. I mean, there are so many things that we take for granted that are actually happening because of the air that is around us. So today we're going to dive into the first part of this, where we're going to be talking about the properties of air, and we're going to be talking about the composition of air, and then the next session that I do will move a little further in the chapter. Right? Now, before I continue, I want you to just imagine that you are in this beautiful green garden, right? Okay, let's say it's evening time and maybe the sun is just about setting and you're looking all around you, you're walking over there. So what are some of the things that you could possibly see when you are at the park or when you're at the garden? Yes, you'll see the green grass, you'll see the trees, you'll see the flowers, you'll probably see children playing with their balloons or with these colorful pinwheels, right? But the question to ask yourself, or the thing to observe when you're looking at all these things, is that is the grass that you see, or the leaves that you see on the tree, or the balloon that you see, floating around, are they all just at standstill, or are they moving? No, of course, they're moving, right? So, for example, if you take the leaves on the tree, you can see them moving. Sometimes you can see the blades of the grass also moving. When it comes to, balloons, for example, or pinwheels, you can see the pinwheels, these colorful pinwheels just going round and round and round. In fact, I get very excited when I see them because it's so much color and I love to see them going round. Or the balloons are sort of going up into the sky. So the point over here is that these things that we see around us don't seem to be static. They don't seem to be like stationary, right? They're moving. Now, why or how are all of these things rotating or moving on their own or flying up on their own? What's the answer? What is that one thing that makes all of these static things move? Well, yes, the answer is definitely the air. Right? It is because of the presence of air that we see the grass moving or the leaves moving or the pinwheel rotating or the balloon flying up, right? Now, we know that air is all around us. And how does air make all of these things move? That's because air moves itself. And on that note, let us note that moving air is known as wind. Right? So it is because of the wind that you see all of these beautiful things happening, right? When you blow bubbles and you see the bubbles flying off, it is because of the wind. It is because of the air, right? So we know that all of this is possible only because of air. And we know that air is all around us, right? So now that we know that air is all around us, let's talk a little bit about the properties of air, okay? But before that, let's say that, okay, we know that air is all around us. Where do we see it? Well, we don't really see it, but we know that air is present all around us, right? And in fact, this air forms like a layer or a blanket around our planet, a blanket around our earth, and this blanket or thick layer of air that we find around our earth is what we call the atmosphere. So point number 1, we know that there is the presence of air all around us, even though we can't see it. We know that the entire planet, our earth, is surrounded with this blanket of air. And what is this blanket of air called? It is called the atmosphere. Now, how does the atmosphere help us? In so many ways, right? It actually helps to maintain the temperature. It helps us to, block out the UV rays from the sun. So it has a lot of benefits. But right now, I'm not going to be talking about the benefits of the atmosphere. Let's just say we know that the atmosphere is all around the earth. But tell me, do you think that the atmosphere remains sort of constant in the sense that is it of the same thickness all around the earth? No, this is not really true, because as we move higher and higher and higher into the layers of air, the air starts getting thinner and thinner. So let me just show this to you as a picture. This is our planet over here, right? Now we've got this layer of air all around us. This layer of air all around us is what we know as the atmosphere, right? Now we are on the surface of the planet. This is the surface of the planet. As you start going up into the sky, or let's say you start climbing a really high mountain, you go for a trek to Mount Everest, for example, right? You're moving up. Right? Now, what is happening as you move further and further away from the surface of the earth? The further you move away from the surface of the earth, this blanket of air basically starts getting thinner and thinner, right? So, as you go up, it gets thinner. Right? And in fact, you will notice this yourself sometimes. There is a very important part of our air, which I'm not going to be discussing too much in detail now, but we know, for example, that oxygen requires us to breathe, right? And as you go up sometimes, climbing a really high mountain, you start finding it difficult to breathe because there is less oxygen, because there is less air. Now, I'm not talking too much about oxygen just now. I know you already know it. We will do that in next time's lesson. But for now, what is important to remember is, number one, air is all around us, right? And without this beautiful air that we have, so many of the things that we take for granted in our daily life, like blowing out a birthday candle, or seeing that balloon float up into the sky, or seeing that pinwheel move around, or blowing bubbles, all of this would not be possible, right? Now, air is all around us. It forms a blanket around our planet or our earth, and this blanket of air is basically known as atmosphere. Atmosphere is very important because it helps us to maintain the temperature of the earth. This is again a very important function of air, of the atmosphere. And as we go higher and higher up, which means we move away from the surface of the earth, this atmosphere starts getting, or this blanket of air starts getting thinner and thinner, right? Okay, now like I said, let's go ahead and discuss the properties of air. We know that air is all around us. This has already been established, right? Because otherwise most of the things that we see around us would not be happening. But we know that it's present all around us. Like I asked you this question before, can we see it? No, we can't. So one very important thing to note about air, a property of air or a characteristic of air is that you can't see it, which means that it is invisible. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? You can't see it, but you know it's there, right? Almost like magic. Also, it is transparent. Transparent basically means something that you can see through, right? Which means it doesn't seem like this air doesn't form like a wall around us that you have to look around. No, there is air all around us, but you can see things very easily, which means that it is transparent. So this is property number 2, right? It is colorless. It has no color. We know that, okay? And it definitely doesn't have a bad smell or a good smell for that matter. It is odorless. So these are some of the things that I think we can, even when we live in our daily lives, we know that we can't see air, it's invisible, it is transparent, it is colorless, and it has no odor, so it is odorless. But are these the only properties of air? No, there are quite a few more that we are going to be discussing. So let's imagine this. We were talking about balloons. Do you like balloons? Because I really love balloons. Okay, so let's take a balloon. Now we know that when we take a balloon, for example, let's take a balloon that you know that you get at the market. What will that balloon look like? It'll look like a small thing that comes in a packet, right? So if you have a packet of balloons over here, you'll have these small balloons that look like this, right? Now, if you take one of these things and you start blowing air into it, right? What happens? This balloon becomes bigger and bigger. So what does this prove? What property does this prove? What property of air does this prove? Or what characteristic of air does this show us? This shows us that air occupies space, right? When you take that empty balloon, it looks so small. There's nothing in it, only nothing. So small, right? Literally, you wonder, what am I going to do with this? But the moment you start blowing air into it, it becomes this beautiful big balloon. It looks so different. So Air occupies space, and this is another characteristic of air. Nothing much to think about over here because this is again something that we have observed so many times in our daily life, right? Air occupies space. Now, I have another very interesting characteristic or property of air to show you. We filled a balloon. Now, let's imagine that we filled two balloons, okay? Two balloons, and we filled them more or less to the same size, right? Let's say that both these balloons that we filled air into, we filled the exact amount of air, right? Now, we take these two balloons and we tie it to what is this called? It's called a weighing scale, right? So I'm putting this down. We've taken a weighing scale and we have attached both of these filled balloons, which we have basically filled with the same amount of air. So the space taken by air in both of these balloons is absolutely the same. What is going to happen to that weighing scale? Weighing scale is going to balance itself, right? Okay. Now, let's do one thing. We have two balloons over here. I'm going to take a needle and I'm going to go to this balloon on the left-hand side over here. What has happened? The balloon has burst. And immediately, as soon as the balloon bursts, you will see that the side of the weighing scale that has the full balloon goes down, right? So, what does this show us? This shows us that air has mass, right? We know what mass is. Mass is the amount of matter that is filled into a particular substance. Now, air has mass, which means that when you deflate a balloon, it will have less mass. It will have almost no mass, and the one that has air in it will go down, which means this shows us that the air has mass, right? So an inflated balloon will definitely be heavier than a deflated balloon, and this means that air has mass. So what are the properties that we've covered so far? We've said that air is all around us, but we can't see it, so it's invisible, it is transparent, it is colorless, it is odorless, it occupies space, which we know when we fill a balloon, and air has mass because when you deflate a balloon, it'll have no mass. It's basically lighter than something, not no mass, but it's basically lighter than a filled up balloon. So air has mass, right? Okay, now we've covered a very important section or a very important key takeaway in terms of this chapter, which is properties of air. Now, when we're talking about air around us, we know that we've discussed that air is all around us, and we've discussed the properties of air also. But what is this air? We're talking so much about air. What is this air exactly? What is air made up of? Is it just one kind of uniform thing that is all around us that we call air? Or is it made up of different things? Well, yes, I think you know the answer. It is made up of different things. In fact, to be precise, it is made up of various gases. Right? In fact, I discussed oxygen with you earlier, if you remember. Oxygen is one of the gases that is present in the atmosphere. But it's not just oxygen. We have so many gases out there. Right? So, air is not a one thing that you see, uniform thing that is there all around us. It is a mixture. What is it a mixture of? It is a mixture of various gases. So, let's take a look and see what are the gases that we find in the air around us and what is the proportion that we find them in. So, this is a pie chart over here. Let's talk about the gas that is present in a majority in the air around us. So, at a majority in the air around us, we have nitrogen. Now, I know you have heard of this gas before. Nitrogen occupies 78% of air. So, the majority gas in the air around us is nitrogen, 78%. But then what about oxygen? We know that oxygen is so important for us to breathe. We already spoke about this earlier, right? So oxygen is also present in the air. How much oxygen is present in the air? Well, out of this 100%, if we are saying that this is 100%, 78% of this is nitrogen, 21% of this is oxygen. Surprising, no? Because we need so much of it to breathe. But this is actually not the majority gas. oxygen forms only 21% of the air around us. 78% is nitrogen, 21% is oxygen. How much does that give you? That basically gives you 99%. What about that 1% that is left? Well, that 1% is made up of different sorts of gases like carbon dioxide, water vapor. It's got a few other gases as well as dust and smoke. So if we're to take the composition of air, basically, if you're taking air as 100%, what is air made up of? It's made up of the majority gas that we find over there is nitrogen, 78%. 21% is oxygen, and the 1% that is remaining is other gases like carbon dioxide, water vapor, and dust and smoke. So today, we are not going to be getting into all of this. What have we discussed today? We've basically discussed the presence of air around us. We've spoken about the fact that air has different properties. And we've spoken about the fact that air is not just this one thing that we have all around us. It is a mixture of various gases. So we've spoken about the composition of air, right? Let's just do a quick summary of what we have covered so far, so it's fresh in your memory, and then next time we will move on to the next part of this chapter. So, air is present all around us. Moving air is called wind. We already discussed this. Correct? Air forms a thick blanket around our earth, and this is called atmosphere. Atmosphere helps us with many things, and one of this is maintaining the temperature of the earth. And as you move away from the surface of the earth, this atmosphere or this blanket of air around us becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. Right? Then we moved on to the properties of air. What are the properties of air? It is invisible, it is transparent, it is colorless, it is odorless, it occupies space and has mass. Right? Okay. Then we went ahead and discussed the composition of air or the components that are present in air, which is basically the various gases. We spoke about nitrogen, which is present at 78%. This is a majority. Then we have 21%, which is oxygen, and the Baki ka 1% or the remaining 1% is a mixture of carbon dioxide, a few other gases, water vapor, as well as dust and smoke. And with that, we have finished concept 1 or lesson 1 of air around us. Wait for the next lesson because we will be covering all of these components a little bit more in detail. ठीक है? Okay, one more thing, like I said, this is I've already shown you this, so I'm not going to go too much into detail, but basically this is the pie chart. I want you to remember it as a visual. If you remember this pie chart as a visual, it will help you remember the figures that I spoke to you about in a much better way. The 78%, the 21%, and the 1% will be much easier for you to remember if you remember it like a pie chart. Okay, with that, once again, you know that we have a whole lot of lessons that we've done for you, a whole lot of sessions that we've done for you. Go ahead and visit and revisit all of these sessions on the 6 to 8 channel. There are different sorts of quizzes and practice sessions and concept sessions and lots of stuff for you to go ahead and learn and revise and practice from. The link of all these sessions is in your description box, so go ahead and take a look at it. And as always, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. I'm going to see you very, very soon with the next lesson of this particular chapter. Bye-bye.